Hey everyone, it's me, Undead Viking. Just for you to understand, I own lots of purple bandanas. This is Skull, by the way. The Vikings won a meaningless game against a really poor opponent, but whatever. I'm never gonna be upset that my Minnesota Vikings managed to pull off a win. Regardless, I'm not here to talk about pro sports in any way, shape, or form. I'm here to talk about D&D, and I'm here to talk about a session of D&D I had just a couple of days ago. And I want to talk a little bit about DMing or game mastering or refereeing a role-playing game on the fly. Uh, I've tried to do videos about this in the past that kind of touch on this, and I personally feel like I do a really good job at DMing on the fly. And I think I've talked about this in previous videos as well, to the few of you that watch these, that being able to just realize that the rigidity of having a stat block and a thing in a room and saying this is what you experience and this is what happens can work a lot, and it can work really, really well. We all start playing the game that way. We all start doing it in that way. And then we change after years and years and years of doing this thing. And I firmly believe that being able to find a happy medium between this is exactly what's supposed to happen in that room, and that's not going to work now. It's going to be lame if I try to shove that square-shaped peg into the circle hole. I need to change things up. And there can be lots of reasons why you do that. It can be just because the situation in the campaign has changed. It could be that maybe you, as the person running the game, don't want to just put the players into a spot where they're all going to die. You want to make things a little more challenging. Like they've had an easy go of it for like the last hour and a half or so, and they need to have something kind of, smack them in the face and give them a moment of pause before they realize that, oh wow, this is actually a dangerous spot we're in. So on Saturday we had a session of D&D. We had ended the session before on a bit of a cliffhanger because of the fact that they're in this ancient dwarven mine, and they have been tasked to go into it, find out if there's anything in there that's worth going back in there to like continue mining, and also if there's anything in there that would impede this new dwarven faction to come in and take it over. They need to clean it out. Basically, the dwarf that hired them to do it is not a combatant. He he doesn't have his own personal army or anything like that. He's kind of a bit of a renegade from the dwarven faction that kind of is all encompassing in this campaign that I'm running, homebrew. Anyway, so they've gone in and they've had multiple combats and multiple things have happened. None of them have died yet. However, they did go in with 5 hirelings, and they're down to 2. So they're down to their the 3 hirelings that are left. Is they have a thief, a warrior, and a lantern bearer. And then in the last, so there was this. They had entered this large throne room, and they had discovered this very, very, very old dwarf who said that he had been cursed, like his skin was like paper thin, and he could barely lift his head. He was seated on this throne. He looked like skin thrown on a skeleton, basically. The remnants of like his once like proud royal clothing draped over his body, rotting, and he said that basically these dwarves that had lived in this mine had followed this dark curse, and they've seen multiple murals of all these like hideous and horrible things, and he this dwarf kind of tells this story of how he is cursed, he cannot die, he's been in this room for ages, pretty standard stuff, if you will. And and it was of course a trap. Basically, as soon as somebody was willing to approach the dwarf and speak to him closely, he ripped the skin off and turned into a devil slash demon type thing. I described it a little bit of like a combination of, and if you want to use technically, I don't normally use monsters straight out of the monster manual, but I will steal them and then alter them slightly. But I basically I kind of took a little bit of the Glabrazoo, a little bit of the Ice Devil, and a little bit of the Bone Devil, and kind of mixed them all together to create this creature that was able to kind of polymorph or wear the skin of the dwarf, and then like it had a scorpion tail, it had this big trident or halberd in its hand, and was also had these big fangs and was able to bite. It was a very, very, very powerful creature. Had some spell resistance, was able to create ice walls, which we rarely step away from Theater of the Mind, but I actually did set up a table on the table, and I put little, like drew out the room, and because the devil was able to teleport around and be able to drop ice walls, so he was able to, basically cordon off certain people away from each other and made things difficult for them. The Lantern Bear ended up getting ripped apart, which was kind of expected. But it literally it was one of the most like intense combats we've had in a long time. They'd had a bit of an easy go of it or whatever. The devil was able to regenerate because of the intense cold in the room. And one of my players has this annoying habit of like recording the amount of damage everybody like the damage they do. And like he's like, we've done over X amount of damage to this thing. Why is it still alive? It's like one of those things. And then he has this mentality of like it's got to have like 26-30 hit dice or something like that. Like he's very, very specific about the rules, and that's fine. But I just kind of like, whatever. Just like, sure. I know exactly what's going on. I know that this thing is healing damage. I know that, like, that's just the way it is. They did actually have, luckily enough, some holy water. They were using that on it, and he couldn't regenerate that damage. And then it literally came down to, at the very end, everybody had dropped except for the paladin. And they had one last vial of holy water left, and the paladin had 3 hit points and the devil had 9, but they didn't know that. And then the last attack the devil did was basically take the thing and run up to the devil and smash the vial against it, so the holy water hit it, because he has a really low dex. He couldn't throw it, and he put you can see that skull right behind me, right there. That's like his dice tower. My friend Brad, my buddy Jason was the paladin. My friend Brad, like, it came down to a roll, and Jason, like, with dropping the 20-sided in, my friend Brad couldn't watch. He like literally like I can't watch because he was so worried. It was a great moment of tension. Like everybody was like, if he doesn't do this, it's a total party kill, and they're done, right? And we're playing like AD&D, so and these characters are fifth or sixth level. It has taken them forever to get to this point, and they had drastically overextended themselves as far as their resources are concerned. But he rolled and he got a 15. He hit it, rolled enough damage, killed it. Much rejoicing. They're over recuperating. Now that one, I pretty much ran that combat. I ran exactly how I expected it to go. I knew what the abilities of the creature they were fighting. I knew what he would do. He at one point actually had the another one of the hirelings had dropped the warrior, this female warrior. Her name is Meryl, and the running thing is that the paladin is in love with her. Like, and there's like I mean, and we've been playing, and it isn't played for jokes. It's like he's has these feelings for Meryl, but he's a paladin, so he can't act upon them. But there's this moment where because the devil can read their minds and things like that, the Meryl dropped and was dying, and the devil looked at the paladin straight up and said, "You favor this one, don't you?" And then he walked over to like slam his halberd into her, basically. And I was like, he's gonna kill her. And the paladin like basically leaped in front of the blade. And I said, because you're not trying to defend yourself in any way, like you're basically just driving in front of it, he gets advantage on the roll. And he said, yeah, that's fine. And that was a cool moment, right? I mean, and we do a thing where we hand out we hand out poker chips for rerolls, basically. There's more to it than that, but like for moments of a really good moment of heroism, or a really wonderful moment of like just levity and humor, things like that, I will award people poker chips for those, and I give them the ability to reroll. And the reroll can be used for anything. You can make me reroll a die. If like I roll and I hit, they can reroll saving throws, they can reroll damage rolls, whatever, and they just spend it, and they can keep them over. And I mean, a lot of people like kind of poo-poo that, but I like to do that. I like to if you're going to be more than the sheet in front of you and try to make the game more fun for everybody involved, I have no problem handing out a little bonus when that happens. Anyway, now moving on. Now that was a very, very, very straightforward combat. It took for us, it took like 45 minutes, which is forever for a combat for us. Combats for us usually take 5-10 minutes. But it was an epic combat. It's one of the main bosses of the dungeon they're in. And they won. They actually found the treasure room. They found a secret door to the treasure room, but it was trapped so heavily that they didn't want to bother trying to open it. And there was a key in the room, but they didn't find it. I feel kind of bad about that because there's some pretty awesome treasure back there. But maybe they'll go back. Maybe they'll try again and then they'll get it. But regardless, who knows? I mean, sometimes you don't get treasure. Sometimes living is a treasure itself, right? All right, so this is what I want to talk about. This is DMing on the fly, and this is why I realize I'm going to be patting myself in the back here a little bit, and I'll make sure I don't break my arm. Ow! But this was as epic as that was for everybody. This particular moment, everybody talked about, oh my gosh, this was amazing. And I did not have this idea until literally minutes before this happened. So it's tough to explain without showing you a map. I might be able to pop one up. Wait, I can't ever. Yeah, over here. I might be able to pop a map up over here. But there's several places on Drive-Thru RPG. I don't mind drawing maps, so I'm not very good at it. But there are several people that I will pay like the dollar, to download a map from somebody that's numbered. But doesn't have any locations described or anything like that. And what I do is, and I can probably grab. I apologize. I'm gonna grab my cool notebook. I love my shark notebook. But what I do is, so like if you see this, like this is all I have in front of me when I'm running a thing. This particular spot over here, that's a map that I paid $1.99 for, I think, and it was actually like 5 maps. It's like it's several um like here's another level of that same thing. And then what I do is when I prep for something, and normally they've been in this dungeon now for like 6 or 7 sessions, which is also inordinate from me. But what I do is I print off the map, and I just glue it on into inside the notebook like so. And then what I do is I just write a very brief description. And the descriptions aren't like major. It's just like throne room. King sits on his throne, becomes a devil, and gives his stats, whatever. There's things like small pool of warm water here. Bathing will cure any freezing damage that people have suffered, and so on and so forth. Things like that, and it just gives like the monster, and then I use just my imagination to kind of describe everything else to them and go through it. And the way I do that then is that I just have all of these rooms here, and then I just write down the number of the rooms. And a lot of times, like some of these rooms are just it's a repeat of the same thing, so I don't have to do a bunch of things. And that'll be like a Saturday afternoon for me. Like I'll just tell my wife, I'm like, hey, I'm gonna go do some D&D prep, and she's just rolls her eyes, but hey, she knew that, and she was getting into this, right? And she knew when she married me, she saw my library of D&D books, and so it was. But the nice thing is I haven't really had to do any prep for like the last couple months because I did the entire prep for the entire dungeon, and I've just with it for a bit. But now that doesn't work for a lot of people. I understand they need to have it more written out and scripted out and whatever. But that works for me, and it's very, very minimal, right? I just have that one notebook in front of me, and that's it. That's all I have. And if you can find the ones with the good rings, the good plastic rings, like you can it just lays flat in front of you, and you can use it, notes and whatever. It just works. Anyway, so they got to this area, and I'm gonna try to show where it is, but basically it's like it's this area right here on the map. And what I had originally decided for that area of the map was that it was going to be very dark in there, and there was going to be treasure, but there was also going to be shadows in there. Classic D&D monster. You walk into the darkness, the shadows start touching you, they start draining your strength. That starts to be problematic, right? One of the things about players is that you take away their hit points, they're like, okay. I mean, I understand. That's the cost of doing business, right? Getting hit with an axe does 1d8. It just does. But when you start taking away their stats, that's when things start getting real. That's when things start getting problematic and difficult for people. It was like some shadows in there. And so what they did is they went to one of the doors, because there's like 4 rooms, and if you go back, you can see there's 4 rooms, and they're all kind of connected or whatever. And there was gonna be like one room that was off to the side, and I was gonna make that room like a secret door, like it was gonna be tough to find, but that's where the treasure was gonna be. So what happened is that they went in one door, and they said, and they opened one door, and I said that basically your lantern and lamplight just stops at the doorway. It's just dark inside. And that's another thing about players is that if you put them in some place where it's like, yeah, it is just dark inside that room, that is a situation where they're like, ugh. Because one of the things about my campaign is, and I think everybody should do, is they should get rid of the ability to use magical light. Just get rid of it. Throw it away. Throw it away. That's one of the things that and I don't mean to, again, pat myself in the back here, but that was something I was doing before Shadow Dark made it cool. I was like, no magical light. You got to bring lanterns. You got to bring lamps. You got to have a lantern bearer, and things like that. You got to bring torches. And the reason why is because then you can have something like that where magical darkness can actually really, really affect the way things are working. All right. So anyway, they opened up a door and they're like, I don't want to go in there. They were like, yeah, we don't want to go in there. We can come back to this. There's other places we can go. So they closed the door. So they went around and they went to another door and they opened it up and it was dark as well. And so now these rooms are not they're connected. They're not like connected. They don't have doorways that meet up with each other, right? They just don't have that on the map. But and my idea is that the shadows would go through. There was shadows gonna be there, and they go through the walls, and they can't actually see them go through the walls. And then if they got hurt, they'd leave and go to the other thing. So in my mind, the way the rooms were gonna work is that they would get into a room, they can't see what's attacking them, which would suck. And then, as soon as they do any sort of damage, they're just gonna flee. If the cleric has the presence of mind to turn them, they will just flee and go into the other rooms and just hide out there until they heal up, and then they'll come back. And it was going to be a persistent type of situation, and the players are going to have to be smart about, taking care of it. And what I was planning on doing was that, like, I was going to say, like, the shadows were actually the things that were creating the darkness, and so as shadows died, like they could see that, like they could start to see a little bit of their torchlight in the room, like not a lot, but a little bit. And so they're like, okay, that's what we got to do. And so when you give pathways to fixing things, even if players are just smashing their heads against the wall, when they figure things out like that, they're like, oh, cool, we're figuring it out. That makes them feel smart. And you feel smart for coming up with something that it was clever, and then you all kind of work together to create that narrative. Anyway, so the players were like, nah, we're not going to go there. So they start going around. They open up another door, dark. They're like, nope, not going in there. And they go around a little further and they open up the door, dark. And they're like, now they think it's all the same room. But in actuality, what it was is that there was like 4 rooms that were this. And then they were saying, well, this is weird. And they were like, well, and then they did the thing that the DM always smiles as soon as it happens. And if they hadn't decided to do this, I just would have gone with the shadow idea. What they did was they said, well, how about 3 of us stay here? Because they're down to 6 people. One of my players couldn't show up. I normally have a 5-player group, but only 4 we were able to show up. And then we had the 2 hirelings. The lantern bearer had died earlier. And they said, well, how about 3 of us stay here? And then 3 of us go to another door, and we'll yell into the room, and we'll see if we can hear each other. And I was like, and they're like, okay, yeah. And then somebody said, you split up, and they're like, well, we're gonna be like 40 feet away from each other. What could happen? So in that moment, I decided, and I hadn't fully formed the idea, but in that moment, I decided when they yell, there's something in there that's going to make the words that they're saying sound different. And it's gonna be a different thing that happens. So they split up and they opened the doors and they were like, and one of them said, and one of the players, like, very, very basically said, can you hear us? And then they said, and then, like, my friend Craig, who was with the 2 NPCs, he said, do I hear them? I said, yes, you hear them. And then he goes, yes, I can hear you. And then I said to the other 3 players, I was like, what you hear, in his voice is, yes, I can hear you. I walked in. You got to come see this. And they were like, and my players, God love them, they will separate player knowledge and character knowledge very well. And they'll just say, okay. And so they're like grab on, like they grabbed onto each other, so like they were in the darkness, and they walked in. And the first thing that happened is the door slammed shut behind them. And then all of a sudden I said, there's gonna be one thing in here, and it's gonna be malevolent, it's gonna be evil, and it's gonna be like basically invisible, like a shadow demon that is in this room. And it starts attacking them. And I decided not only does it attacking them, but if it can attack all of them at once. This sounds evil, and it was evil. It does minimal damage, like 1d4 damage to each of them. But they have to make a save. They have to like basically make a drain save. Relatively low save. Remember, they're like level 6. The save difficulty class is like a 14 for them. If they fail it, they will start losing a random attribute points. I will roll 1d6 to determine which attribute, and I'll roll a d4. See how many points they lose, as their strength and anything. Like they'll just start losing those points. Boom, they come in. I roll attack rolls. I only hit 2 of them. They both failed to save. Like the paladin lost 4 points of intelligence, and he wasn't smart to begin with. He went down to like a 5 intelligence, and the sorcerer lost like 4 points of charisma. So it was immediately boom, devastating to both of them. They're getting attacked. They start yelling, like, "Where are you? Where are you?" and so in the other and I was like, okay, he wants to finish off these 3 before he attacks the other 3. Now they hear a voice. The other 3 hear a voice that basically yells out. It's like, stay where you are. Don't come in. Basically because he doesn't want those other people to come in. And this became just, you had 3 party members who are blind. They try to go back. Well, then I decided, well, now I'm going to be even more evil. Like, the door can't be opened. It's locked. It's magically sealed. It can't be opened. Other than basically breaking through the stone wall, they're not going to be able to get out of this room. And so they go back. They can still feel the doors there. They can feel because this is a dwarven fortress, mind you. So remember, it's basically a stone door. And they can feel the handle, but nothing moves. It's just a solid piece of stone now that's locking this room. And they're like they're casting spells out to nowhere. They're trying to like do everything they possibly can to like damage this thing, but of course they can't see it. It's swirling around them. And then the one there actually was one where they broke a hole through the wall. Like the sorcerer had just gained a level and he got the spell Shatter. And so he was actually casting his spell Shatter on the wall, trying to break it. And they actually finally broke open a hole through the door, like about the size of like a grapefruit or so. And not big enough for them to crawl out. And some light was able to come into the room. And not that they could see, but basically they could see out. And I ruled that like the demon was covering it up with his hand, basically, so they wouldn't be able to see. And the sorcerer actually had the presence of mind. The next time I see it close off, like something's there, I'm going to try to hit it with a magic missile. But of course, he like failed and he didn't make his spell penetration check. So I said, yeah, the spell just nothing happens. And they're like, oh my gosh, we're dead. And they're going back and forth. And then the 3, like basically the 2 NPCs, they were like, they're hearing the party say, and then as they're like yelling out the door, like, help us, help us, help us. Instead, they're hearing voices saying, you need to run. It's like, we're almost dead. It'll kill you. Just go, just flee. And so the NPCs are like, "Let's go! Hey, let's get out of here. We're gonna die." And to his credit, the person playing the Inquisitor, which is a class we've made, I won't talk about that, but basically the person playing the Inquisitor was like, he was like, it's like the sorcerer at one point in the campaign had said, just leave me behind, just let me die. I don't deserve, just like, and he's like, well, the sorcerer has said that before. He was like, okay, well, maybe he truly wants to die, or maybe it really is that bad. And so they were almost leaving at one point, almost leaving, and then uh they had actually gotten like a door open, and they had actually like put an iron spike in it so it would stay open. And they said, but let's flee, and they left that door open. And I actually the players that were almost dead, that were inside the room, were being like, they were trying to feel their way around the wall to see if they could find an exit. And they and so I ruled in my mind. I was like, well, the shadow creature, it knows if they get there, they're gonna escape. Yeah, and I also ruled that it can't leave that room. It can't. It's like, if it left, it would render its powers useless. And so the whole goal of this creature is just to keep things in that room and drain them dry. And so, and mind you, this is all stuff I'm coming up with in my head. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. That would make sense. And I was trying to like walk that delicate balance of like, I didn't want to be too cruel, but I also didn't want to let them off the hook. And so I ruled that as they're just about to leave, because there's a stairway down that led out of the level they're on, that they could have ran up and gotten out of the dungeon. I ruled that the Inquisitor takes I said, I look back just to make sure, and I said, you see this shadowy hand come out and flick the iron spike away, and the door slams shut. And he's like, they got to be still alive. And so they went back, and between the luckily the warrior woman had this magical warhammer, basically a sledge that was doing a bunch of damage to the stone. Between that, the spells that the Inquisitor had to weaken the stone, and then the paladin on the inside, who actually has a huge mace that is his weapon, is like this slamming on a wall. They were eventually able to basically break out of the room and managed to save. The sorcerer nearly died. And now they've got a lot of drain damage and things that they're going to have to recover from. But it was a combination of a monster they couldn't see, a trap that they had to figure out, and basically ventriloquism and an illusion that was working against them the entire way. And everybody, once they survived and they got out, they were like, oh my gosh, that was one of the best traps we've ever had. They were all like, that was crazy. And we were laughing and we were joking, and like they were saying things like, at one point, I remember when the grapefruit sized hole was there, like the players are like, we don't even know if they're alive. They might, it's like, maybe the thing's trying to convince us or trick us into coming into the room so it can kill us as well. And the sorcerer took his staff, and he has this magical staff, and he shoved it through the door, like to like kind of like show, hey, look, I'm trying to help, kind of thing. And and I and this is mean, but it was like, you hear the sorcerer's voice say, it's like, run, but make sure my father gets my staff. Like pushes it out the door, and everybody laughed, and they're like, what? I mean, it's like, it's like, why? It's like, make sure that, like, just so he has something to remember me by, or something like that. And yeah, so I mean, it was like one of those things where we all had a good time with it. And now, I'm not saying everybody can come up with that. And like I said, if you think that's a good idea, you want to twist it and turn it and use it in your campaign, use it if you will, right? My players know that I make things difficult for them, and they appreciate it, and they appreciate the fact that it takes some smarts and intelligence and work to get through those things. That would be one of those things, if you get the wrong people, they would be frustrated. They would just be like, well, how is this supposed to work? This is unfair. This doesn't work. I don't like this, and so on and so forth. And so you got to know the room and you got to read the room. And to be fair, the guy who plays the Inquisitor, he's one of those people too, where he's like, well, if he had been trapped inside the room, like he probably would have been more upset about it because, but the three that were in the room, my buddies Trevor, Jason, and Brad, they are very much a come what may. Like as long as the story is good, I don't care what happens because this is just too good. And that isn't anything against my buddy Craig. I mean, I've known him forever, and I love playing the games with him. It's just there's certain things, aspects, or whatever that are good or bad, right? I mean, it's just like the strengths and weaknesses or whatever. So you just kind of deal with that. But I do think that like that was one of the best things I've had in a long time when it comes to D&D. And I think it has a lot to do with the fact that I started playing a lot of Call of Cthulhu, and Call of Cthulhu has a lot more to do with the story. Like you'll go an hour without making a die roll because you just kind of let things happen. You let things breathe. You let things you allow yourself to ask the question, wouldn't it be cool if I did blank? And then you allow that cool thing to happen. And you make it cool and you make it fun. And like this was definitely a situation where I had that thing where it's like, wouldn't it be cool if? And then we did it. And then we had fun and it was cool. And I really feel like, and this is totally anecdotal, right? But I really do feel like the few times that I get into when I play D&D as a player, whether it's one shots or a campaign or whatever, that the people that are running the games tend to forget about the fact that it's okay if you just allow yourself to do a few things on the fly. It doesn't have to be a script. It can be an idea, and the way to get that idea done can go a lot of different ways. Anyway, I just wanted to share that story. It was so much fun. And this is kind of a session report slash. I was kind of proud of myself, I guess, for coming up with that. And trust me, I don't consider myself to be that great of a game runner, if you will. I have my own foibles when it comes to those things, but I was really proud of that session. It was a lot of fun. I mean, I went up and bored my wife with the story about it. You know, she wouldn't care one way or the other, but she listened and she smiled and she said that sounds like a lot of fun. And she's but I had to go and tell her about that. But anyway, there you go. As always, please like, share, comment, subscribe, whatever. Do the things. I'll keep trying to tell these stories as they happen, and I would really like to do. I'd like to figure out how to teach people how to run a game on the fly, and talk about how that aspect of me running games has been, for lack of a better word, cultivated through my years of gaming, and maybe that's something I could do. I do remember the very first time I ever DM'd on a fly, and I think I talked about that briefly in a previous video. But maybe I'll touch on that again. But anyway, in the meantime, have a great week. Thank you for watching this. Thanks for listening. Take care of yourself. Be good to yourself. And I'll see you next time.